was opening Diversity House. And you pulled up to that event out there on Diversity. And that's when I first like, hey, Mr. Man, like, you should come on the pod. Yeah. And he was like, you know, I heard, I've been keeping up. And he's like, I'm going to come through. And I was like, okay, the mayor said he going to come through. Here you are. I appreciate you, Clyde. I appreciate you.
Of course.
Definitely appreciate you. Welcome to this very special edition of Herb and Tou, alongside the great Toussaint Warner. My name is Herb Howard. This is where we get together and talk about issues that currently impact the black community. We talk about how those issues impact us as individuals and also how they impact us as a collective, and along with your help. We talk through those issues in hopes of finding the optimum solutions for how we can overcome said issues. Again, overcome them as individuals, but perhaps more importantly, overcome them as a collective. Thank y'all so very, very much for choosing to tune into this conversation. As always, your input is valued. Certainly appreciate it. Anything you want to add to the conversation, feel free to do so. Make sure you like, subscribe, and set the alert so you get reminders every time we drop new content, and share it with at least one person that you think would find this conversation valuable or add value to this particular conversation. Again, this is Herb and Tou. It is intellectual thuggery at its absolute finest. My name is Herb. His name is Tou. Tou, what's happening, good brother?
Family, I'm blessed and highly favored, man. How you?
If I was doing any better, I'd sell myself, man.
Ass on Nas this weekend. I just want to put that out there in the ethos.
You saw Nas this weekend?
The greatest MC to ever live.
That's cap.
Nas Escobar.
Hov.
At Ravinia.
Nah, it was fun. Everybody was there.
With a band.
Nah, everybody was
there.
And
it was pre-house picnic. That's really what it was.
Yeah.
But I got there late, but it was super dope.
Everybody was there, and I'm not a huge Nas fan.
You're a hater.
No, I'm not. I was about to say.
That's all it is to it.
Mad respect to Nas. I acknowledge him as one of the greatest MCs. I'm just not a huge fan of him.
It's like saying Mike's one of the best NBA basketball players.
That's nowhere near like saying that.
Oh, God.
You saying that Nas is that far and away the best of all time? That it's not up for debate? Because basketball's not up for debate. Like, people come here talking LeBron.
Not up for debate.
I don't even have that conversation.
Not up for debate.
Knock it off. Anyhow, I did have a little fear. I did have a little FOMO after because everybody was out there, so I do kind of wish I went, but I'm not a big fan. Anyhow, special day today. We got the mayor in the building. Mayor Brandon Johnson is here. Mayor, we appreciate you taking the time, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Tou, for inviting me. The energy and the vibe here, that escalated quite fast. I felt like I had a responsibility, like in the movie Coming to America, to just insert another name just to help end the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't just like say Joe Louis because we weren't talking boxing.
Joe was 137 years old. That's how I should have introed you. I cannot believe it. It is you. I am a loyal citizen of Zamunda.
No, I'm good, man, and really appreciate the opportunity to be able to get into this exchange today as we, really dive into all the critical issues that not just the city of Chicago is faced with, but, what's happening on the globe right now.
Yeah, it's important. Tou always says that Chicago kind of sets the tone for things globally, whether it's how we respond to negative things or how we set the energy for positive things or what have you. Why do you think Chicago is such an important cog in the global system of culture in general?
That's a great question. If Dilla was here, you know what he was saying.
Yeah, shout out to Dilla.
Yeah, thank you, Dilla, for really helping to, elevate the consciousness of the world that everything that is dope about America does come from Chicago.
Facts.
I think it's the inception, really the birth of our city, a black Haitian immigrant and a Potawatomi woman. There's no story more unique in terms of the establishment of a city, where the first business owner was a small business owner, a black man, right? An immigrant black man, establishing this city at the bank of the river with the expectation that it would be the global capital of the world. That was something that he had as a vision from jump, right? And I think we've just carried on that tradition. And I think it's important that we always remain grounded and connected to the establishment of our city, that the consciousness of America has always been expressed through the black experience, through indigenous people. And so when it comes to, innovation, right, the skyscraper, electricity came to life.
About that later.
Yeah, we could dive into that, but like the fact that electricity as we know it today came to life at the World Fair. When we think about skyscrapers and the steel industry as a whole and how that revolutionized how cities were built, all of it has its roots right here in the city of Chicago. And then don't get me started about, our fight for liberation.
Come on.
Some of the greatest thinkers, whether it's, Ida B,
sure.
Or the living legend, Reverend Jackson, right? That connection to the global experience has been rooted and founded in Chicago, and that's something that I hold to as a constant reminder of why it's important that I show up every single day for the people of this city.
I know as the mayor, it behooves you to say it's a Chicago thing. As a resident, I think it's a geographical thing, and I think it's based on what you said, that black people have always been the consciousness of the country, and therefore the consciousness of the world in a lot of ways. The geography that we shape, Cook County being one of the largest concentrations of African Americans, maybe just black people in the world. That's in all honesty, right? And because of our, I don't know, stature or status, really all we had to bring to the table was morality. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting perspective to have. Herb's point about Chicago being what it is in the ethos of culture, it also reflects the same thing in the negative, in my opinion, too. Right? I think it's the original design of America, right? In the negative, you know. I think the concentration or the lack of wealth in our communities is represented by that. I think the segregation is represented in the same way, right? So oftentimes we had these conversations around, in the larger cultural realm today, Chicago, specifically Black Chicago, is kind of heralded as one of the most violent places on the planet. Now, I know the numbers are down, right? But the branding narrative is what it is. And I think I read a stat this morning. They were just talking about the segregation and the breakdowns and how it's really never changed. It's not a melting pot. It's not that story that we tell, right? So how do we kind of rebrand Chicago in a way that tells our truth? That's what I'm always interested in. Like the truth never gets out, right? I saw something else that Chicago's for Chicago. If you're here, you can understand the story, but if you're not, there's a whole nother narrative that's being shaped. It's not reflective, but there are some ills here that are real and challenges that we got to address.
No, people miss the true story and the nature of Chicago. They do. We are probably one of the most misunderstood spaces on the planet. And, you know, I'll dig into that in a second, but something that you said that, you know, how we're often described as this melting pot while also acknowledging the segregated state, that you can't be both, but only Chicago is described as both and. Hyper-segregated. It's like that dude, and no judgment against this dude, who, when they eat their food, they don't want their food to touch.
That's me. I'm the dude.
See, okay.
He called it Thanksgiving, right?
All right. So do we judge? We don't judge.
Okay.
All right,
He judges me all the time. I don't care.
I judge you right back. Judge you for other things.
I judge you for other things too. You want to get there?
No, we won't, because that's gonna. We don't want none of your mess to splash on the mayor, so we won't. Okay.
I don't even know why I provocated that. Right?
It's okay.
But you know, so we are hyper segregated, right? You know, we enjoy the fullness of what the plate presents, but again, we don't necessarily want all of our food to interact the way that way. And so it's important to note that as we talk about the hyper-segregated state of the city of Chicago and the rap or reputation that the city of Chicago has had, let's understand the inception of that. You know, when you think about the gangs, particularly Irish and Italian gangs in particular, right, that moved illegal substances, right, as a means of survival for their particular communities. It's something that oftentimes gets ignored, right? Though there is an understanding of Al Capone, the ideal of a segregated, hyper-violent city has been confined only within the story of black existence in Chicago, where that reputation did not start with black gangs. I just want to make sure that we level set that there's been a story of the Windy City, right, that had less to do with the weather and more to do with the politics, and how the politics would begin to move by, you know, every single doctrine or wave of doctrine that would come through that would benefit any particular cultural group. And so that reputation that we are working through, you know, is one that we have been mired in and have suffered under, right? But one of the things, though, that I think it's important to note, though, that if we talk about the reputation of Chicago globally, people around the world understand the significance of Chicago, the economic significance, right? When you think about the airports, where there are more dollars that are being moved through the city of Chicago than places around the globe, right? 2 major airports. And we're seeing a resurgence of our airport, by the way, too. And I just want people to know that right now, Chicago, we are literally chasing down Atlanta. So I just want to make sure that Mayor Andre Dickens know I'm coming for you.
Let's go.
Right? So we're about to be number one in terms of the country's busiest, airport. And so I'm lifting that up. One other point, 20% of the world's fresh water is right here in our front yard. And so the global significance of our city is something that the people around the world appreciate. I think residents or people of Chicago, sometimes it's not always as clear of our global influence because of the day-to-day grind in our neighborhood. And so what am I getting at? If you think about the route that people take every day, most people don't have the route that I have to work, right? Where I'm able to see the different components of the city of Chicago and how all of this is working together to help transform not just our city, but really the region. And so as you get into this next layer of your question around how do we address the stigma or the reputation that is not only inaccurate, but there's an intentional characterization of our city in order to benefit, I believe, the handful of people who have enjoyed the reputation of the city globally, even though we have suffered locally. If that makes sense. Yeah. And so now, what I believe my responsibility is not just to speak about how violent crime is going down in the city of Chicago. It's why it's going down. The last thing that I'll say, and this is, no dig on any other city, but the city of Chicago, even with the reputation that people have, that false narrative, we have never been the most violent city in America.
I agree.
In fact, we're not even in the top 20.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Right. So if you look at some other cities, and I won't name them because I know those mayors and those respective leaders that are working on that issue. But I will just say there's one city in particular that has been characterized, as well as statistically, has been one of the more violent cities in America. And that's Baltimore. But if you look at the work that Brandon Scott is doing there, another black mayor, where we have seen in this first 6 months of this year, where we're talking about unprecedented numbers in terms of
homicides we've ever had to this point in the year
ever in the history of the city, right? And so the work that he is doing, the work that I'm doing, investing in our young people, investing in mental and behavioral health care services, investing in building more affordable homes, attacking the issue at the root cause and having a real commitment to it, the best way to overturn the reputation, the false narrative around the city of Chicago is to put in the work, and then we have to collectively tell our own story.
And telling our own story is important. In another endeavor of mine, I travel almost weekly during the fall and winter. And I was somewhere one day and I bumped into a security guard at the place I was at. And he was like, "You from Chicago?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, it's crazy. What's wrong with Chicago?" I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" Because it's personal for me. I've been here my whole life. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "No, it's just wild." And I was like, "You been to Chicago?" "No, I ain't never been." "Then don't talk about stuff you don't know about, man. Like, miss me with all of that. I don't appreciate it. It's not cool. And you thought that was gonna be a way to enter a conversation with me, and it's not. Keep it moving. Like, you don't know what you're talking about."
And then you punched him. No, I'm
right.
No,
if you think we like that,
we ain't violent.
Like, if you think that's how we coming, but no, I do get tired of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned, commuting through the city, whether you're coming from west side, north side, south side. You can see the skyscrapers that you also mentioned. The most iconic image of this city has been and probably always will be the Sears Tower.
And thank you for calling it by its real name.
I'm born and raised here, Mr. Mayor.
You
know what I mean?
I respect that.
No disrespect to Willis or his none of that. But
or Arnold.
Or Arnold, right? No disrespect to Willis or Arnold, but the Sears Tower. But I do have an issue with the fact that the pillars have been a little dilapidated lately, and it's like I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. Can we write them a ticket, a fine, or something? Like every day until y'all get them pillars right, looking the way they're supposed to look as the iconic representation of this world-class city, we gonna get y'all fined for this. This is not okay. Fix it.
Let me just say, of all the constituent calls that I've gotten, you are the first person to ever say, "Mayor, can you do something about the Sears Tower?" I'm just saying,
they gotta get the pillars right, man.
But I think what
antennas.
I think what you're highlighting is that, there's a certain level of pride that we take as residents of this city, that when people come at us in a way that doesn't reflect the reality of Chicago, and whether it's the physical infrastructure or whether it's just the reputational aspect, that it's been one of my top priorities really is to tell the story of Chicagoans and don't just lead with our struggle, lead with our storied past that has made it possible for us to exist. And this is something that I know that frustrates my opposition, because my opposition, they don't want me to speak to the first migration, the second migration, and the story of Bronzeville, or even the story of Austin on the west side of Chicago, which at one point we had 100,000 residents, which was a city within the city. There are cities that are not as big as the neighborhood of Austin.
They're probably like the third or fourth biggest city in
You
the
know what I'm
state,
saying,
right?
right? We are a city within a city, right? And you know what I think what you are exposing is that the city has not been well maintained or taken care of, and that has played out in how administrations have approached our public education system. Our people have not been well taken care of. When it comes to housing, our people have not been taken well care of. When you think about the finances, right? Where look, I deal with difficult decisions every single day, and I don't like to overly judge previous administrations, but I will say, you know, selling off public assets, you know, it was probably one of the more irresponsible moves, and not only sold them off, but took the dedicated revenue stream that was meant to secure our retirement, particularly public sector, where black folks overwhelmingly reside in those particular jobs. So sold the public assets, and then the dollars that were dedicated to secure the retirement of those who served this city, took those dollars, took control over them, and then in the name of development, turned it over to the interests of corporations. And then now mayor number 57.
Fix it.
You see what I'm saying, right? And so all you're pretty much saying is, man, you got to fix that freaking Sears Tower as well. But it's a good point though, because you know, one thing that, you know, I would just say, you know, maybe other cultures have this as a story as well. You know, I sometimes I look at this job the way my mother approached Saturday mornings. And you know what Saturday mornings look like.
Clean up. It's Anita Baker. Is Frankie for me anyway.
Yes.
I'm a little younger than y'all, but for me it was Anita Baker, Frankie Beverly, and as soon as you heard it, you just start sweeping.
That was it. Like you still get triggered. You hear the song, all of a sudden you go find a dish bucket. Right? But you know, it's one of those lessons where I learned earlier that this assignment is a group project. And that's really how I'm trying to lead in this moment. You know, you were just sharing, you know, before the tape started to roll, all the different voices that have sat in this chair. That's Saturday morning. If anybody sits in this chair and they believe they have the single answer or they're it, I mean, I'm not saying they sit in this chair, but you should be suspicious, you know, of them. And so whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the neighborhoods, you know, and whether it's the actual social issues that we have to address, because we have not been cared for. Maintenance has gone, we haven't had any. And so now we're in a situation where I think the other way I would describe it is, you know, at 49, I'm developing some real old man, you know, proclivities, and I'm a big HGTV guy. Okay. I'm not going to do anything on any of those shows in my home, but I just want to see what's possible, right? Yeah. And it's like running the city of Chicago is like an episode of like Property Brothers. Here's the house that we want, right? But how do we get that house with what we can afford right now, with what we have? And then every time you're going towards renovation and you take out a wall to open up space, you discover
something else.
You see what I'm saying? That's behind there that we have to address. You know, so look, it if nothing else, for my attention span and my just sort of desire and need to have not just a challenge, but a complex challenge with a multitude of decisions and things that we have to address. For the way I'm wired, it's a perfect fit for me.
How do we motivate the group to take on their portion of the responsibility? Right? That's the, you know, even the premise of this show is based on that same tenet, but it's very difficult to motivate the group to understand that they're all a part of this. Yeah. You have a responsibility, right? Yeah. At the core of any electorate tenure, the responsibility is on the community to force the elector
Yeah.
to do what they're supposed to do. But we think, our power is going into the booth, punching the button, and then leaving it up, leaving our hands be. How do we motivate the group to understand that that's their responsibility?
Yeah, Tou, it's an excellent question. One of the things that I do want to lean in a little bit around is, the importance of like where the power has to be. And this is not to diminish at all being on the 5th floor. It's a very powerful position. I'm humbled by it. And historically, if you think about the greatest gains that we've ever made, we had less people in political power, but we had more people who understood the collective power of groupthink. And it doesn't mean that we are monolithic in our thinking. In fact, it's one of the things that I think that we get that's a mischaracterization of black groupthink. What makes us so powerful is that you can sit around, in a circle and hear 4 different ideologies in one conversation, and we walk out of here unified. Like, that is unique to our culture, right? And I believe that there has to be a greater emphasis on the power of the people and less emphasis on the power of the position. And I'm saying that as someone who is mayor, who has power because people put me in power. And it's a conversation I remember having with Reverend Jackson and, quite frankly, his wife, Mrs. Jackson. And we were having a conversation about the third. She's spectacular. I mean, you talking about the real, think and thought behind the movement. Doesn't get the respect and honor that she deserves. But one of the things that she did say when I first jumped into the political realm and ran for county board, she was always concerned about me leaving my role as the third rail and challenged me. They said, look, if you go into this political space, where does the heat come from? Who is on the ground organizing people to continue the journey that you're talking about around what our shared collective responsibility has to be? And I think to that point, people have to know what the vision is first. And what I've worked to do is I've worked hard to make it very clear that I want a safe and affordable city. That's it. I want to repopulate the west and south sides of Chicago. What good does it do to have a safe city and people can't afford to live here? And what good does it do to have affordable homes but you don't feel safe? And so understanding the assignment that to have a safe, affordable city, you have to invest in people. And as I set that objective, people need to know what their assignments are. And there is a collective responsibility that I believe that we all have to be able to help people understand their assignment. So again, taking it back to Saturday mornings, objective, the goal is to have a clean, stable home, right? And then if that meant, Brandon, you got the floors, Andrea, you got the dishes, Leon, you have the basement, you have the windows, right? And I think this moment, I believe there are a couple of assignments that I think that we have to be clear about. We need a collective effort to challenge government to fund our liberation. That let's not
pay what you owe.
You see what I'm saying? And look,
ain't nobody ask you for no favor. Like,
that's what
you
I'm
did
saying,
this
man.
to us. You made these communities this way. Run it back.
And then my concern is that too many of our people, because of the frustration, because government is not paying what they owe, we throw our hands up and say, well, let's just do it ourselves.
Right.
And that is, we've done it all the time, right? If you don't want to give us loans, we'll start our own bank.
Sure.
If you don't want to educate us, we'll start our own schools.
Sure.
So I'm not mad at the idea, right?
Sure.
You can't just simply wait on. And at the same time, government across this country will wait us out as long as necessary to deflate, to defeat, to demoralize our desire to challenge government to pay what they owe. And so I think the first assignment is we need a collective course challenging government to make sure that it pays what it owes. I'm going to end with this. President Trump just did something that no other president has done in the history of America. And we're even talking about even during slavery, that his bill that he just passed was the largest transfer of wealth to the richest people in the country in the history of America. And then you're going to get upset with me because I want schools to be fully funded. Black people get to be enraged in this moment. I certainly am. And I'm not going to take and accept this assignment that our rage and our frustration can't be expressed simply because we don't want to be labeled a certain way.
Right.
They're never going to label and characterize us in the true nature of our formation anyways.
Right.
So why am I going to capitulate, to
We say
their
capitulate.
form? That's what we're saying, capitulate.
We made up a word and we sold like a couple thousand T-shirts that said capitulate because we feel like when we do that, that's kind of what we've been.
No,
So
I like
we
that.
made-
I'm gonna just stick with that one, especially if they can generate revenue to help me close my budget.
You got it.
Capitulating, whatever it is,
Well, we're thinking
pay
about
what
cutting
you
you in.
want.
We might cut you in.
Don't do that. Let's play that game.
Look, you had something?
Real quick, in the vein of honoring Mama Jackie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And honoring your part of the
He's
mission.
a Rainbow Push kid. He grew up
And
in
honoring your part of the mission. I was invited to the Reparations Committee. I applied and it was denied. It didn't make no sense to me. So you having that power, it's time to use some of that power and move some weight around. All right? We just want to make sure I said
Loud and
on
clear.
camera, loud and clear.
He said-
Yes, damn it.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, but I'm glad you mentioned that though, because look, I get the urgency of this moment, and I believe I have about 677 days left in my first term, and I counted down because I don't take this for granted. I literally have a clock on my desk
Wow.
looking at. We don't have time to mess around, But the idea of reparations is something that I want the city to get accustomed to hearing about as we work to embrace policy that speaks specifically to those who have been harmed the most by government. And when we talk about understanding your assignment, everybody has a role to play. And whether it's the collective groupthink around revenue, of challenging the ultra rich in this city, in this state, to pay their fair share. I think another assignment is I believe the power is in our ability to bring faith, labor, and the Black business community together. So Dr. King gives this a profound speech, Ask Me, 1967, and he always said that labor rights, civil rights are one and the same, essentially. What I think people miss in that speech, because we often quote, if faith and labor were to ever collide, I'm paraphrasing, what enormous potential it would have. I think what people were missing was the central component of that is what you said earlier, our faith and our morals, that we show up with that, and there's power in that, right? Because challenging people, whether they want to make the right moral decision or not, it provides and it keeps our people engaged and hopeful. Why is that important? When we're dealing with white supremacy, we're talking about some of the most wicked presentations known to existence. And we don't have to just simply talk about what happened during slavery. We can just, talk about the addiction
What happened this
yesterday,
morning.
right? The addiction of jails and incarceration that this country has. If we can identify that as wicked,
Sure.
why take away the response to it, which is righteousness? Now, look, do your morals put food on the table? Come on. I mean, we know
Right.
that it takes more than just
Right.
faith. And this is the part where I believe what Dr. King was getting at. Faith without works is dead. And I think that's what he was getting at. Civil rights, labor rights, taking that righteous position and stance, bringing the business community together collectively. That power is literally in our midst right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to seize upon. And here's the thing. With that power, we're responsible with that power. It's not becoming for Black folks to take on the posture of oppression.
No.
I'm not saying that it's
Oh, but it happens
I'm
frequently.
not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm saying that here we are in a moment where you've had Dr. Brazier over here.
Yep.
You had
Yep.
Stacey Davis Gates over here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You talk to business leaders. You talk about the people who are formerly incarcerated. Our collective power in this moment has the opportunity to change the course of history for generations to come. And I think that the more we understand that assignment, that collective assignment, it doesn't mean that we're always going to agree. Right? It just means that when we have our conversations and we fight it out internally, when it's time for us to go outside, It's charge. It's onward. And it's one thing that I will say that the generation before us, they did a better job at that. Now, some things they kept too quiet. We should have been more vocal about some of our internal struggles. But because we understood the assignment, the larger political goal, it was important for us to hold it together for the sake of posterity. And I believe that's the political moment that we're in today.
I heard this African sister the other day, and it was very interesting. And she was actually a comedian, right? And she created this understanding that it was like an aha moment. It's very simple to realize when she said it, but I never thought about it like this. In her conversation, she was talking about how like 60% of Africa is like under 30, right? 60% of the continent
That's right.
is under 30 years old, right?
Oh, wow.
So from a fuel of people power standpoint, it's tremendous. It's huge. They're gonna be the next hub for everything.
Sure.
It just is by the math of it. But also in that statement, she said they're under 30.
Right.
They don't have a direct connectivity to what colonization did to the continent. So how they view white folks is very different. They do view them as a savior because they come with gifts. So they see them as the great white hope, right? And we often leverage a quote on this show from Neely Fuller. It says, until you fully understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything you think you understand will only confuse you, right? So when I hear you say we shouldn't take on the posture of the oppressor, how do we stand in front of this moment? That's part of our challenge here, right? And that's kind of the question I was getting at, is like, how do you see your mission in shaping the narrative for us to have that understanding? Because that lack of understanding is so pervasive. It creates Trump. Trump isn't the problem, he's the symptom. He's just a symptom. That's it. The problem is our affinity to capitalism. It's our affinity to what power looks like. It's our affinity to misunderstanding. Because if you truly know who he was, you know he don't have it. He never had it, right? He's never been a baron. He's never been the real estate mogul he claims to be. NBC or ABC or whatever TV show that came in and made The Apprentice. They had to repaint. They were scared of filming there because it was so dilapidated, right? Those stories are open. You can find those on any space. But we don't know that information because we live and die for the aggrandizement of having. And we, that becomes our identity. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, no, that's a very powerful analysis. It's quite accurate. In fact, I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of African leaders in cities, particularly in the west coast of Africa, and they talk about how European leaders, I guess is one way to put it, sell a dream to our African siblings. And in many cases, in the desire to pursue those dreams in the Western Hemisphere, these individuals are taken advantage of. They pay a certain amount of dollars to get on a boat, literally, or a life raft, quite frankly, and they die along the way. And what's disturbing about it is, to the point that you raised earlier, is that we don't see our collective possession of power as access to long-term sustainability, that we have to go elsewhere is the larger point. And how do we get people to see that? One of the lessons that I learned in organizing is that people believe that there's some sort of magic hook to this. It's not. It's the grind of the day-to-day. It's the door-to-door. It's the conversation. When I think about the 80s in particular, when there was more of a global Pan-African understanding, right? Where you had, Congressman Leland, for instance, there's a school in the West Side named after him. Leland had the congressional seat that Sheila Jackson Lee was in before she passed away. And, Sheila Jackson Lee's son is, my senior advisor. And when that era of congressional leaders, whether it was Congressman Leland, Congressman Washington, they had Dorothy Tillman. They understood the global aspect of our fight. It's why, on the continent, people were asking, how's Harold, right? Because they found hope there. And I believe the way we can restore that is with receipt. I think what government does have a responsibility to do is to help people regain trust in our pathway to liberation through the legal system, through policy, through government, because there is a pathway of our liberation through government. And the proof is what the President of the United States of America is doing right now. None of his people or his base is talking about doing it on their own. No one is describing this greatest transfer of wealth as a handout.
Right.
But it's
Right.
literally a
Right.
government hand.
Here, take that.
To take it, right? And so I think part of our collective struggle is that these type of interactions require work. It requires pressure, and we have to be willing to put that in. I think the last thing, man, to it is, when I think about it, I want to make sure I close on this part with receipts. I'm in a text, exchange with Andre Dickens. I talked to Karen Bass. I talked to Brandon Scott, right? These are individuals that are going through the same challenges that I'm dealing with. And as you see violent crime continues to go down, as we build more affordable homes, and we're seeing proof positive of what Black leadership brings to the consciousness of America, it's our responsibility to help elevate and to congratulate. It doesn't mean that politicians should automatically get, a high five or the pat on the back. That's not even how I'm wired.
Right.
I'm 1 of 10. My father, 82 years old, I was raised by James Evans. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The dude didn't even pass out compliments. You know what I mean? So it's not like I need that, right? But I do think for the sake of what we're trying to accomplish, people need to know that what we're doing is working. And we have not had this level of concentrated power for a very long time. Yeah. That's why there's a concerted effort to undermine, to distort, to confuse the voters about how I'm even showing up. You all know what I dealt with those first 6 months.
For sure.
And quite frankly, it's something that I haven't said enough, but never in the history of America were cities ever asked to stand up, concentration of housing or shelter without the support of the federal government. And I know that there's critique of, how other mayors have engaged, but in New York alone, we're talking about 100,000, of which the vast majority of them were from the continent of Africa. And I think to the point that you made about, our African sister, 1 in 10, this was 10 years ago. We have not even gotten the updated stats yet, but 1 in 10 Black Americans are foreign born. We're going to have to rely upon one another, the global continent. And I know that creates some tension, when we start talking about reparations. We'll just separate that for a second. But if we're going to survive in this moment, we cannot afford to go into a silo or go into isolation. The fact that people around the globe are going to look to a place like Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, the coasts of America right now are closing in with global population shift because of, it's clear that the planet is on fire. People are going to be looking to the Midwest for refuge. So when I talk about safe and affordable, making sure that we repopulate the west and south sides of the city of Chicago, the reason why that work is moving with some urgency is because it is inevitable that the repopulation of the city in the Midwest is going to take place anyways. We have to make sure that we are invested in on the front end.
I'm with you on that, Mr. Mayor, but I also have a lot of first, second generation friends that have parents from the continent, right? And almost without fail, almost invariable, they've all had issues like, yeah, my parents don't really fuck with y'all like that. You know what I mean? They don't really, there's a narrative that they arrive with about Black Americans that doesn't jive with why they came over here with their own personal aspirations and intentions, right? And it creates a natural division, a natural tension between Africans coming to America and Black Americans that are here. And I think there has to be some reach on both sides. Like, okay, we can say open arms and welcome everybody. We welcoming people. You know what I mean? Big Mama, yeah, your friends come in and get some food. We that kind of people. But if you come here and then you spit in our face, it's like they lazy and they violent and they ignorant and they don't work hard. It's like, you don't know us. Same thing I was saying about the violence thing earlier. It goes across the board. Don't come here talking crazy. You don't know me. You know what I mean? And I think there is some healing that has to happen before Black Americans are like, yeah, we rock with everybody from the continent because y'all from the continent. I would love it to be that way. You know what I'm saying? But it's just not. And I feel like we didn't create that divide.
That's real talk. Look, there is a lot of work to be done. The damage that has been done in our communities and to our people is quite severe. And it's one that I think sometimes, and I'll admit that we might brush through it faster than we should. We should take our time and lean into that frustration. I share this story on a personal note. And my older brother would have been 60 years old, died addicted and unhoused, and had untreated trauma, didn't have a place where he can be vulnerable and openly admit his insecurities. Named after my father. My father was a hard worker, strong reputation, and just felt like he couldn't measure and live up to it. And I in juxtaposition of like how he felt unsafe or didn't believe that he could speak to his vulnerabilities, my daughter, the niece that he never met, turns 11 on the 14th. And when she was going into first grade, we're in a back and forth, and she told me in the middle of the conversation, "Daddy, you are triggering me." You know what I'm saying? Right. You know, that's some real Black father points. And I know I lost that day that I was in an argument with a 7-year-old in the first place. But for whatever reason, it was very powerful for me to believe, to know that my daughter, and I'm her position of power, felt comfortable enough to say, like, something don't feel right. And I'm using that as an example where for a long time our people, we were never permitted to say ouch, right? Our Black boys are encouraged not to show emotion. Remember my middle child, Ethan, just turned 13 in May. I remember we were doing a little bit of work because he wants to play baseball. So, you know, we out there putting in the work. And I saw him like starting to break down. And I'm like, "Are you about to cry?" And, you know, I was leaning into my James Evans, right? You know what I'm saying? "You about to cry?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then I said, "Well, go ahead and cry." And then I'll be honest with you, I instantly became worried because I don't know a world in which he's going to inherit that is going to allow him to be able to say, "Man, this don't feel right." Right. And so now, you know, as a Black father and as Black folks, we are in this sort of duality of it hurt, but you can't show that you hurt. Right. But by not showing that you hurt,
how do I prepare you for the world that is?
You know what I'm saying?
While also trying to change that.
Exactly, right. And so I think to your point about whether it's how we dialogue with one another or how we dialogue with folks on the continent, we have to understand that there are some divisions, there's some hurt there that exists, and it comes out in our individual relationships, but that's just a microcosm of what you are describing. Yeah. And the best way to be able to approach it is to take it head on. And the tough conversations that we have to have in this moment, and that includes me. Like when people say, "Mayor, we need more," like that doesn't intimidate me, but people also have to accept some responsibility that if you want more from me, I'm going to need more from you as well. And it may mean I'm doing a little bit more at this moment, right, where I'm carrying the greater load.
It's a reach back.
But there has to be some collective responsibility to how we show up to deal with the pain, micro and macro, and then figure out whose responsibility is it to take on the different tasks to ensure our ultimate liberation or our healing.
No doubt. So what's actually honest in that analogy that you used with your son, right? Is it okay to cry or isn't it, right? Because I hear the narrative of the society you want to create, but there's a reality of the society that is, right? Black wealth in Chicago is at a net zero. Black wealth in Boston is at $8. We can go down the line, it don't get over $100, right? So the reality of it is when we look at the income chart or the wealth chart of America, Indians are at the top, Nigerians are number 2, right? So even when we had the conversation of Pan-Africanism, I don't care who like me. We can't legislate that. I don't give a shit if you like me, right? But we can legislate where dollars go. We can have those conversations, right? And if we're being honest, the morality, the moral proclivity of African Americans allowed the access for all of you groups to get here. All of you, right? but they all reside or work off the same narrative that has been populated across the globe, the white supremacist narrative. So I'm not interested in the partnership through the vein of my parents I don't give a shit, right? But what's owed to me is owed to me, right? So when you talk about wealth building through government, 90% of the wealth in America is built through government. That's the reality. Pay us what you owe us. That other conversation is none of me, right? You don't got to like me.
I can dig that.
You don't got to like me at all. Nobody. You know what I mean? I can handle that on a one-on-one basis. You know what I mean? There's some Pulowskis I like, and you know what I mean? It's just the reality. As a group, though, you're adverse to my mission. My mission. And it makes it so I can't tell my son it's okay to cry. Because reality, you got $0, bro. And your woman gonna look at you like you got $0. The hell with what he look at you like. Your woman is gonna look like that at you, and you're gonna have to face your children. You can't cry. You got to toughen up.
No, so this is what the lesson that he and I both went through. So it's safe in front of me. And I think what I'm ultimately getting at, whether it's micro or macro, we have to create safe spaces where we can have those hard conversations, right? And creating room where when there is an opportunity to show emotion, to be vulnerable, that's not shunned, right? Because that same black boy who we say can't have that emotion, when he's no longer talking in 6th and 7th grade, then they say, well, what's wrong with you? Why ain't you talking? You know what I'm saying? And so it's a real tough thing. And so, but what I also, to your point was, when I had this conversation with Ethan, and I said, look, the world is not always going to be as kind to you as your father is.
Fact.
And so this is hard, this is tough, and this is also what you want. If you don't want this, then that's a different conversation, right? You know what I'm saying? But if you want this, then you have to be willing to put in the work, right? And this is what my father said to me. He said, son, never be afraid to do a little bit of work. And so that's the conversation I'm having with him. You can't be afraid to do a little bit of work. And the power, though, of being able to own your emotions, to be able to say like, yo, this is tough, and then being able to say, here's what I need. Because once the conversation stopped around whether or not you can cry or not, what do you need? You need a minute?
Yeah.
You need a drink of water?
Yeah.
Okay, because we still got 20 minutes to go, by the way.
It's a kick in the ass and it's a pat on the back.
That's
you know what I mean? And you got to be able to have those safe spaces to be able to do those things. It's just what's required. Now, once you get outside this house, nobody else cares. That's just what it is. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. Outside this house, as soon as you walk out that door, nobody cares. But in here, you can get your emotions together. You can go through the process, all that. But if this is your goal, this is what's going to take. We're going to have to get there, all right?
And he's doing fine. He had a great season this year, by the way.
Absolutely.
Hit 529.
Yeah.
Had a great time behind the plate. He's doing very well. And
that's what's up.
He's going into 8th grade, and he will go into 8th grade in geometry. And the boy is smart, too. So thank God for it.
He's going to be a Dolphin?
Kenwood,
He's
right?
going to be a Bronco,
That's
man.
right. Kenwood, where my daughter's
flip
at.
all this shit.
Where my daughter's at.
Should have been a Dolphin. Anyhow, but if he's gonna play baseball, my nephew he's gonna be a junior, but he's the 2nd ranked sophomore catcher in the state.
Oh, is that
and
right?
So yeah, I can give him the holler at him for
connect.
real. Yeah,
for
sure. You know Rock from Father and Son Barbershop. But anyway, gotta touch on this, Mayor. We've been, we've seen the data about how violent crime is down, and it is. And you pointed out some of the reasons why in terms of investing in the mental health and care and all these different things. And I think you guys have done a phenomenal job with that. I really do. What is it like when you do the work and it's like, hey, first half of the year, we down 30-some%.
Right.
And then somebody's like, hey, I'm going to go shoot up the album release party. And you catch 4 bodies in one night and 18, victims.
Yeah, that sucks, man. I'm just going to be straight up with you.
Yeah.
One of the toughest part about the job is I get a phone call every morning, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I get a report on what happened when I went to bed. And I try to stay up as if there's something I can do.
I'm going to ask you what the sleep is like. I was also going to ask you early in the show, some sirens were going out outside the window. I was like, what is your response when you hear that? I know my response and, other people have their responses, but when you hear that, what's it like?
So I'm going to be honest with you.
Please.
So what happens is, here's real talk. I hear sirens, and the first thing that comes to mind is like, come on, Chicago.
Yeah,
right? Because you do think about it, and so many things can go right and any given moment, something could go wrong.
Sure.
And, that call 8 o'clock in the morning, I try to go to bed around 11:30, because I figure at that point, there's really not much else I can do.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be what it is.
It's going to be what's going to be.
We're responsive at this point.
Exactly, right. And so, when I get that call in the morning about what happened the night before, there's some anxiety that starts to set in around 7:30, 7:45, 7:50. You just want to know that the night was peaceful. That's all I want. The night was peaceful. Yeah. And a peaceful night in Chicago, it's probably
rarity.
And it's probably more subjective.
Relative, right?
It's relative,
yeah,
exactly. You know what I'm saying? But I will say there is some encouragement, right?
Sure.
Where homicides are down 32%, shootings 38%, shooting victims 42%, robberies are down 34%. So we're seeing a positive trend. And again, our investment in young people, investment in our detectives division, right? Our investment in mental health and affordability, all of these things play a part. It's not just one approach,
Sure.
But I think what happens when you do have a bad night.
That was terrible.
That was
awful, man.
Because it's something deep down inside. I think
the mental state to say, I'm going to pull up, shoot into this crowd of people. Even if you got beef with somebody in the party, even if you got beef with 5 people in the party, it's a few hundred people out here, bro.
Yeah.
Like, what you on? Like,
that's right.
And that's tough
it's upsetting. It does frustrate. It angers. But one of the things, though, that I try to do is just remain, like, not just consistent, but bullish in my determination to do everything that I can to bring people together so that those type of incidents don't happen, right? You take responsibility, you take ownership of running the city, and it's maybe it's a mentality that I just got because I was raised by a certain generation as well, where my father, his thing was no matter what it is, it's just work. Like that was his approach, man. I would see my father get up and work after working the third shift, he's coming home as we're leaving out, and he takes a nap because he's about to go out and remodel homes or whatever other hustle that he had, that he was into, and the way he approached life was like nothing is given, everything is earned.
Sure.
And so when stuff pops off like that, all that does is it causes me to become even more obstinate and determined to like do everything in my power to get it right. Because to your point, there were people who came to hang out and chill, had nothing to do with whatever whatever that beef was, right? And for people to lose their life because of someone's hate or mental state is upsetting and is infuriating, and what it does for me as just with a competitive drive that I have. And I do have, I think, a healthy competitive drive. You all know when I announced my candidacy, long shot, I think I was polling at 2.2%. There's even some folks who are popping off now. That's the worst thing you can do to a competitor is taunt them as if what they have set out to do, it can't be done. It's unattainable. Like that's the worst thing you can do. You're better off just being quiet.
Now I'm damn near going to do it just to show you.
You see what I'm saying? It's like now it's like, well, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's the mentality that I'm coming in with. So now I'm going to double down to make sure that our CVI workers who are doing some incredible work, man, I sat with them on Sunday, just giving them kudos as we extended the hours of these brothers and sisters who have, transformed and now coming back to say, look, there's a better way. So now I'm even more determined as we talk about giving people assignment. I want to make sure that the $100 million that we put in the last couple of budgets for violence prevention, that we are able to do that and more in this next budget so that we can make sure that retaliation doesn't become the norm, that mass shootings do not become normalized, and that our people actually show up with opportunities where we're giving these communities something to not just adhere to, but look forward to. It's one thing for me to say there's a better way. But if I don't have an example of what that better way is and what those opportunities are, then I'm selling woof, right? And I'm really trying to provide substance. The last thing that I'll say to that's why one of the things that I've been working on too, around how we create more opportunities, that so last year we had about $11 billion that came through our planning division. This year, we're in the second quarter, or in the third quarter now,
just
right?
Got to it,
Just got to the third quarter. We're at about $8 billion of development. We're talking about thousands of construction jobs. And so right now I'm working with city colleges and some community folks to create a campus on the west side with Malcolm X, where the campus is solely dedicated to developing the trades. That's the only thing this campus does, right? Because as these jobs begin to come down, I need to be able to not just say there's a better way, but create a pathway.
This is what it is.
This is what it is, right? And so like so in other words, when those days and those moments happen, I'm calling my deputy mayors, like, where we at with that Malcolm X, campus? I get like right back at, where we at with them summer jobs? How many people have we hired so far? 28,000. Well, we got to get to 30,000, y'all. We need to do that the next week. It just makes me work even harder to ensure that our people are loved and protected and seen.
I love that. Tou, I want to give you the last interaction before we get to dinner time and let the mayor get up out of here.
It's really a challenge to both of you all, because I disagree with you in regards to what happened this weekend. Right, I do not think it was based in hate. I do not think it was based in mental illness. I think it was based on what I said earlier. There's a zero net wealth, right? Let me tell you this. You were on Salim Wakil's show right before you got elected.
King Salim, shout out to King
Right.
Salim.
My dude.
And I wasn't sure if I was going to vote for you, right? But he asked you a question about your reading list, and it changed my entire perspective of you, because it's my reading list, right? So I know we know better,
Yeah.
right? We can sense, if you're reading those books, we know what's
You talk about black labor, white wealth.
a bunch of, you named about 12 of us. I said, I fuck with that one.
Yeah.
I fuck with that one.
Yeah.
If he read that one, I get it, right? So what we're seeing here, you guys, is an industry. And we don't look at it like that. We say we have you in the seat and we got the shooters in the street.
Yeah.
It's an industry. It's an industry in a world that has not created a pathway for them to survive. It's an industry. That girl whose party it was didn't get there without that same kind of interaction previously. It's an industry, and we got to see it as such. It's not mentally ill. It's not even hate. It's opportunity and access. To the point of the reading list, Coates, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me. I wish I would have brought the book with me, but there's a chapter in there where he's talking about.
I think it's up there, bro.
I don't know the page, but I ain't gonna dig like that. But he's talking about his fear of walking home of the boys of the neighborhood. They had their bubble coats on and they was looking tough and that. And as he grew, he realized that's all they had, right? And they realized in that moment, and they were so violent because they realized they didn't even own their bodies. He wrote it so much more beautifully than I can speak to it, but it is our realities. We're 49. We might have started seeing some of that realities in our existence. These boys 0 to 25, it is their reality. There's nothing here for me, right? So when you talk about affordability, even the trade schools concepts, I love those ideas, but there's an active mission to exclude us. And a lot of our issue is that we can't speak directly to us as the issue. I'm not saying we have the issue, but how the community, larger community, responds to us. So we always got to activate in a group concept, the Pan-African concept, the people of color concept. No, the reality is we're suffering.
The black and brown.
That's the reality.
Sure.
Right? That's the reality. We can go past 22nd Street and it looks like Mississippi sometimes. It's the reality that we're suffering. We need help. We need a funnel, not a shared funnel, not a group funnel, not us, just this group. That's it. That's our reality. And we got to have the vigor and confidence to speak to that, in my opinion.
Well, look, you won't get any disagreement from me there. In fact, I can think about my time in the classroom, my time organizing, and one of the things has always been reassuring and even humbling is when you show up to our people's doorstep and they have very little or nothing at all, but yet somehow deep down inside they believe that there is a better pathway. Because when you talk to many of these young brothers and sisters, they'll tell you their heart's desire and their dreams, that there is a relinquishing or even maybe a surrendering of self and even hope. But when we show up and listen and hear from them, the overwhelming response is that they still wish it can be different for them. And I think the point that you're making about the nothingness or the absence of something is so severe in many of our communities that, and I think I said this earlier in the conversation, we brush past it. I don't, we were low income. Like, I know the difference between low income and poor, right? Low income is that we ate, we just didn't like what we ate,
Right.
right? But we did eat, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? But I've had our nights with the long orange extension cord from a window to a neighbor's house. Like, we lived it, water ain't, but we weren't poor, right? The people in my life who were, and how they suffered and how humiliating it was, it's something that we do brush past. And when I think about the opportunities that we have to provide for our community and the receipts, just going back to what you said earlier, how do we build that collective response? People have to see that there's some evidence that we're serious. And so I'll close with this. It's not just the 29,000 summer jobs, because those are just summer jobs, right? I had one, all my checks went to my mother. I couldn't even keep it, right? But there's a pilot program that we have introduced where we, recruit seniors in high school, and we say, look, before you decide what you want to do after high school, why don't you come work in streets and sanitation? Just see if you like it. Last year we had 75, 55 of them stayed. Of those 55, they're in their second year. By next year, they'll be making $90,000 a year. They'll be barely 21. We are looking to expand those opportunities, and those young people can speak to other young people and say, yo, it doesn't mean that you have to work here forever. We know this generation of workers, it's already proven they're going to have 3 or 4 careers before they retire. In some cases, even more, right? But I think your point about really highlighting the severity of the emptiness that exists within our communities and how we have to collectively hold each other accountable to not only provide opportunity, expand those opportunities and do it with some urgency, that I do accept that as an assignment. And I appreciate you brothers on holding me accountable to it. This has been great.
No, this is super dope. Listen, we get you out of here on this. We got to do dinner time before we go.
Okay.
We play a game here called Dinner Time.
Now, you know he's from the West Side. You ever heard of Bump J?
Bump J.
Rapper.
We're gonna pull your Chicago
Early
card. Pull your
2000s.
Chicago card.
Yeah, see,
Early
I'm gonna be honest with
2000s,
you, man. I kind of missed that.
that West Side.
Goon Squad.
Well, because that was,
good.
keep that in mind, that was like neo soul era. So I was like Erica, Music, Soul Child,
Yeah.
Erica Badu.
Yeah.
Just give me a little grace there. Because, as we would come into our consciousness, I had
Sure.
locks. You know what I mean? I'm wearing Black
Sure.
Love oil. I'm going to the South Shore.
So Bump from over East. I'm from over East. Shout out to Bump. He's a rapper. His stretch was during the early 2000s. That like 02 to 06. Then he robbed the bank and did 2 years.
Industry.
It'll get you every time.
That old robbing the bank.
We tried.
But anyway, y'all silly as hell. He coined this term Dinner Time, and he's got a couple of mixtapes that's titled such. But anyway, what we use Dinner Time for is here. We ask every guest that comes on this show, everybody that sat in that seat, you, State Rep Cam Buckner, everybody that you mentioned there, everybody. We need you to pick 2 people throughout history, any time in history. They're dead or alive, right? Any point throughout history, pick 2 people that you would like to have dinner with, to sit down with you for a given purpose that you create. The tagline of our show is intellectual thuggery. One of those 2 people has to represent that of an intellect, as you define it, not as anybody else defines it. The other has to represent that of a thug, again, as you define it, not as anybody else. Pick those 2 people to have dinner with you and tell us why y'all are having dinner together.
And the concept that we believe, in order to get anything done anywhere, you need brains and brawn.
Which is why we go from the streets to the suites.
Yeah.
On Herb and Tou.
All right. So, because it's you all's terminology, if there's a thug to have a conversation with, it's got to be Nat Turner, right?
Come on.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Come on, talk that.
Like, and listen, I am not inciting violence. I am just saying.
That would be me.
and me.
That would
We are Chicago.
That would be if somebody got you chained up in the backfield, having you work sun up to sundown, you go in that house and you kill them. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
Again, as mayor of the city of Chicago. However, I mean, I think with Nat Turner, I mean, you the only way you drum up the courage to move on liberation, you have to hear from God. Now, look, I know there's a lot of people that believe and swear that they heard from God.
Sure.
You know, but you know, if it weren't for, we know the story, you know, some of the, you know, internal, you know, trickery. I mean, he was moving significantly, you know, through the land and, you know, declaring liberation for our people. You know, so definitely would want to have a conversation with him. You know, I think, you know, intellectually, wow. I mean, there's so many different people I can choose from. You know, I'm thinking about, you know, some of the great, you know, politicians. I would like to know a little bit more about how we get through this moment, right? And so I think for me, you know, the gift of, you know, A. Philip Randolph, like as an intellectual, right? Yeah. People forget, like, somebody had to organize the event. And there was a march before there was a march. That the model, right, that the civil rights movement used was the model that A. Philip Randolph established. And I'm thinking, man, he, at a time in which, like, I don't know if there was even a pathway, you know, for like civil rights, but his understanding and his brilliance, man, of creative, right, how to, like, so there's nothing here. And the brother is just like, you know, dust, you know, out of Mari clay, if you will. So I think, you know, and then I just think that if I could just get, you know, as a, you know, an honorable mention, you know, I do want to, you know, give a, you know, a nod to, you know, someone who I think, you know, gets, you know, some attention, but, you know, perhaps not enough. But, you know, I think about Fannie Lou. You know, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Absolutely.
Where, I mean, how you just show up to the Democratic Convention is like seat us. like from Mississippi of all places.
Facts.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
That's how you do it.
Right? You know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, for me, and I think about just the creativity of A. Philip Randolph and just this no nonsense of our dear sister. You know, there's a great quote, you know, as she's being beaten in jail. And, you know, it's like a Toby Kunta Kinte scene, right? And, you know, sheriffs are adamant about her and other black women referring to these individuals as sir, as they beat them. Right. And, you know, like, this is a powerful quote, you know, where it's like, you know, say sir. And I think the response was, you know, you don't know me well enough to even like dare to challenge me, to give you any honor or respect. And I think that for us, I mean, maybe that's just a good way to paraphrase.
Can't break me. That's all I got left.
That's what I'm saying.
Still great reliance.
Yeah. You know. So those are the folks that I'm hanging out with, I'm having dinner with.
I love it. Definitely the first appearance of Fannie Lou Hamer at the dinner table. I feel like Nat Turner might have been at the dinner table.
Nat Turner or A. Philip Randolph.
No, I know we hadn't heard A. Philip
and
Randolph.
all reflective of that reading list that I appreciate it. You know what I mean?
There we go. It's a great list. Listen, Mr. Mayor Brandon Johnson, we appreciate you so very, very much for coming through. Thank you so much for taking the time out of what must be an immensely busy schedule, man. I hope that sleep from 11:30 to
about
5:30.
Yeah, about 5:30.
It's cool. I hope the anxiety that 7:30 creeping is a little light tonight. But we greatly appreciate you, brother. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for doing the work that you have been doing and continue to do. I know heavy is the head that wears the crown. I know you face a lot of opposition on a daily basis, be it from constituents or be it from the opposition on the other side. And I think that you handle it well, and I think you stayed steadfast to what you believe in and what you want to get done. And I don't care about approval numbers or all that. You know what you want to do, and you are rocking it. Keep going, man. Keep going, brother.
Right on.
We appreciate you.
Thank you all.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. We got to get out of here, man. Thank y'all so very much for tuning in to this special edition of Herb and Tou. We are extremely, extremely grateful to Mayor Johnson for coming through. We truly, truly appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a huge thank you to Ashley, Christian. Thank y'all so much for helping set this up and make sure we got this done. Huge shout out to Crystal, homegirl Crystal Gardner. She was the first person to y'all should have the mayor on there. I think I can help. And I was like, well, thank you, Crystal. You are the absolute best. We truly, truly appreciate you. For P, doing all the hard work behind the camera. For super producer Miss E4O. Still make sure y'all get out to Lily Pads Cold Treats. It is at Foster Beach all summer long. Make sure you pull up, get your ice cream, get your cold treats,
Be afloat.
rent the tables, the chairs, all that, and hang out at Foster Beach. Erica Ford Oliver will be there with Lily Pad Cold Treats all summer. For Tou, I'm Herb. Thanks again to the mayor. Y'all be good to each other. Peace.
Assalamu alaikum.